tonight. We'll call the regular or special school board meeting intent for the school board order. You have the agenda in front of you. We do have a quorum. Mark made it. Kate will not be able to be with us tonight. She has a concert tonight for her kids. So with that, we'll stand for the pledge of allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Do we have a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
So moved.
Thank you. Second. Thank you. Any discussion on the agenda? Hearing none, all those in favor of approval of the agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Both same sign, motion carries. We're on the consent agenda. Do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented? So moved. Second.
Second.
Thanks, Angie. Any discussion on the consent agenda?
How did it unfold with Ariana? She's leaving us 10 days earlier, looks like.
Don't have that finalized from Lake City yet, so I don't know how many days. They were looking at increasing the request to 10 days. But the only day I'd like to keep her here, in the end of June is for we have a data retreat. So it'd be nice to keep her around for that. So I think it'd be great. She's gonna be a professional and do all everything that she needs to. And if we get somebody on board early, we should be in pretty good shape, so.
Anything else on the consent agenda? Did we get a motion second?
We did, Patrick and Angie.
Anything else? Hearing none, all those in favor of approval of consent agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Pose same sign, motion carries. And we're on the communication, so 4.1, discuss superintendent Patuska's 2023 performance package. So as he does every year, put together a package for us that we can walk through. I haven't seen it yet. So I will turn it over to Superintendent Patuska.
Well, in an effort to keep Kate and Patrick a little more up to speed on what the performance package is, we usually make a decision in June of every year or even in August, up through August, to try to find out some different areas that the school district would like me to go after in a performance package. And it's voted on, and I know since I've been here, and this is my 12th year, so this has been unanimously approved by the school board each and every year, and then I try to give a presentation in June to make sure that everybody has a good understanding of what happened with that performance package. Well, in an effort to get Patrick up to speed and even Kate and some of the rest of you of what's been going on with this, I thought I'd put together a little bit and have a little discussion today. If anybody had any questions about where we're going with our enrollment projections and some changes that are going to happen, that first budgeting piece, and then the second piece, we'll also discuss a little bit about the HVAC and the lighting system that we have. Plus, what you'll notice, we'll go in some different directions because there's a lot of interrelated ideas with both the HVAC and the lighting, and what we're doing with class sizes next year with some enrollment changes that we're seeing in the district. So in that first one, the performance package, we begin analyzing and comparing. Maybe I should put that on so we can take a look at it. Especially those up in the audience today. So as we take a look at this, the performance package was right on top. So begin analyzing and comparing the 23-24 budget early, mainly because we're seeing some real enrollment declines that we haven't seen for a number of years. In fact, I think you've got to go back pretty far. We've got an anticipated number in kindergarten next year and the possible trend of smaller grade levels for all of us in some future years. So what are some of these issues? Well, even as we grow as a community, the number of students that are born within our community and the number that are entering kindergarten and the number of families with children that are moving into the district are declining. And unfortunately, there's fewer kids being born to families within our borders than there even was a dozen years ago. Also a factor, although slowing down, are some of the inflationary rates, although I didn't hear what did the Fed act today. I can't remember. That they're dealing with a number of areas. These are just some hiring factors that I'll identify below are going to create some right sizing for the school district as we go forward. How we manage enrollment growth is critical to our success as a district. Managing the personnel costs to mimic the increases or decreases in students is required to keep the budget healthy while keeping class sizes pretty small to ensure student learning even when staff are reduced. So our enrollment, the main influence on our school revenue is the state-generated general formula, which is based on student counts with individual districts. The current formula per pupil unit for 22-23 is $6,863. So every student generates that kind of revenue for the district, and some of our students even generate 1.2% of that, our high school students and others. Although our student count has remained relatively consistent over the past decade, the general formula dollars don't have the same purchasing power that they previously had. We are fortunate to keep our cost for transportation and special ed considerably lower than other districts, as we take a look at every time we go over our audit in December, and that allows us a lot more financial stability. When kindergarten grade levels are small, it sends a ripple across the district for about 13 years. When there are 3 smaller grades in a row, and actually you're going to see 3 out of 5, it changes that ripple into more of a wave. So that graph, and that's in your handouts. So this is what you see each month in our consent agenda. It always lists the enrollment. So if you take a look at the last day, which is the far left column, that was the last day of the year last year. So if you jump one to the right, or under September 22, you drop from kindergarten. So we went from 150 to 146. And this, if you follow the grade along, so kindergarten's from 146 to 147 at our April. First grade's up to 148. Second grade has went from 63 to 66. We've got a drop in third, and we've got an increase in fourth. So we're actually up 8 kids at the elementary school. At the middle school, we've got a decline of about 15 students, with probably we're average about 3 to 4 kids per grade level that are gone. And then our high school, with some early graduations, 9th grade staying strong at 180 kids, which is actually up from last year. But we start losing some of those seniors to early graduation, and we'll talk a little bit more about the early graduation in a little bit. So that's a little bit about the current size of our district as of the 15th. As I mentioned, 3 of those 4 grade levels in the past 4 years are now below 150 students, and the projection for next year is 135, which would be the second lowest class. The second year I was here in 2012-13, we had 139, and that class is sophomores right now. So if you go back to that graph, you can see that those sophomores are now sitting at about 156. So a lot of kids moved in. That usually doesn't happen. So that ripple we were kind of expecting on that one really didn't come to fruition. We had a lot of kids move in. Communities of Kasson-Mantorville are still building a number of new homes, yet these homes are not reflecting any student growth within our school district. I think the mortgage payments in a lot of these houses are a little bit too high for some of our young parents. Thus, the conclusion might be to offer more affordable housing if we really want to attract some new families to the area. And that's tough too. Open enrollment. What would we be doing without open enrollment in the school district? With that, our open enrollment has played a significant role in keeping our grade level sizes near normal and assisting with our school district budget. 12 years ago, when I came, open enrollment accounted for about 6.2% of our students, while today it's over 12%. In fact, in just this year's kindergarten, it's over 15.5%. So open enrollment, even though we've got fewer kids, families having kids here in the district, we're seeing that open enrollment is increasing pretty dramatically. Kasson-Mantorville Schools has focused diligently over the years on being the school of choice in the area. And we've done that. I think a lot of that with our commitment to excellence, and it's really making a difference. families outside of our schools are choosing us, and there are many factors why families continue to choose KM. But some of these are, I think, pretty significant factors. One is the strong teachers with high academic rigor, all the way from pre-K all the way to graduation. Our academic proficiency scores are rebounding nicely, and I cannot wait to share with you the scores across the district and what we did in some areas that we saw some very profound growth. At comprehensive academic curriculum, that's something that we've taken a lot of pride in, especially at the high school level. We offer such a wide variety of curriculum, so kids that want to get into a career, kids that want to get into a college level pathway, we've got a lot of options for them. We also have a very strong focus on our students that have special needs. We've done a lot with special education, we've done a lot with 504, and we're really starting to attract a lot of our English learners. So those are some areas we're starting to see some growth. And we have excellent facilities in which to learn and to teach. And I think we also know that we've got a number of people that come here because of our fine arts opportunities and the Performing Arts Center. That facility has opened a lot of doors there. And we also have a lot of students that come here for athletic opportunities. I thought this might be interesting for everybody to take a look at. These are some of our enrollment trends over the last dozen years. So when I first came in 2011 and 12, we currently have about 135 kids that were open enrolled into the district. And that number has slowly grown. We've seen it, it's been pretty stable over the years, steadily growing over the years. And we don't have the data for 22, 23 yet. But when you take a look at 21, 22, you'll notice that we're up 128 kids in open enrollment. So we're averaging about 10 new kids every year. So that's been great for our student class sizes. And open enrollment out, we started about 126, and that number stayed pretty firm all the way across. And we just saw a tick up just this last year, 21-22, from 117 to 141. So you'll see a percent. We saw some significant drops like in our sophomore classes, some others, but there's others that are ticking up a little bit, and we want to try to get a handle on that. So the net is, we used to be a positive of 9 as early as 12 years ago, and now we're a positive 121 kids in the district for open enrollment. So that's what's helping keep our class sizes where we want them to be. So the actual number of students, which is different than up top, these are ADMs, or average daily memberships. So these are some kids that might stay for 3 months or 6 months or 8 months. When you add up the actual students, this is what it boils down to. So right now we've got 263 that are in and 47 that choose to go out. And those are our student enrollment counts. So over the last 12 years, we're actually up 10 kids. We had a couple years where we were really high because we had some big classes, but now as we start getting some smaller classes at our elementary school, things have changed pretty considerably. Any questions on any of those? As a school district, we continue to try to keep our class size as small as possible, yet we know that the budgetary concerns are always a factor. You have to play that in as a school board. Too often, school districts are forced to make significant cuts due to the budget, due to not right-sizing the number of sections in a given year to fit the enrollment at each grade level. By reviewing the enrollment data annually, making the decisions on when to right-size, we need to do that. School boards are able to reduce the likelihood of drastic changes in personnel FTEs and severe budget fluctuations. And we all know districts in the area that are dealing with some very serious budget fluctuations right now, and they're cutting lots of teachers, they're cutting programs, they're cutting staff, and that's something that I've been very proud of this school board in supporting it when we need to make some of those reductions, because if you don't, that's when you get those budget fluctuations and personnel start making some moves. So I'm thankful that you've allowed a lot of those budget reduction, or the right sizing to happen. Outside of enrollment, there are some other variables to the existing budget and future budgets that need to be accounted for. Below are a number of factors that we'll need to consider in the revised 2022-23 fiscal year, in addition to setting the budget for the upcoming school year. Please note that benefits were not included in these staff increases or decreases. So, and I could certainly go that direction if there's an interest in the board to, if the number of board members say, yeah, we'd really like to see what that looks like with their benefits package, I could certainly add that for the June meeting. But here's some of the budget adjustments just for 22-23. So this isn't looking to next year yet. This is what some of the fluctuations we've saw just this year with some of these factors. And the first one was inflation, and we know, we've got families at home dealing with that, just like school districts here and businesses throughout the state of Minnesota. So we saw a utility increase. We're expecting that to be around $22,000. Our electric, water, and sewer is up $28,600. Our fuel or transport for our transportation department's up about $30,000. Snow removal is up $47,000, and that insurance MOU was $44,600. Some of the reductions, well, we had some of the loss of teachers because they didn't take healthcare insurance. That was $26,000. We eliminated the spring surveys for $11,300. Snow days don't cost us as much money if we have snow days. So our transportation costs, there's two different areas where we save in transportation. One is fuel, and that's around $9,000, and personnel is around $13,243. And we also save because we don't pay non-certified staff on those days unless there's something that we work out with the principals, and sometimes that happens as well. But the non-certified staff, that saving comes to $36,288. We also had some teacher changes during the year. So when Mr. Nordine went to Mr. Thomas, that was about a $30,853 savings. Foslin to Anderson was $21,000. Trellstead, if you remember, she was part of our middle school programming for transitions kids. And when she left and there was nobody to fill her back, remember we split those kids, and 5th and 6th graders went to the elementary school, 7th and 8th graders came up here to the high school. We offered a stipend to both the elementary school and the high school teachers to take over for those kids, but the net was a savings of about $26,900. So that's what it looks like for some of the budget adjustments you'll see from Bob coming up in June. So when we do the revised budget approval in June for the rest of the year, and he's working with this factor, plus he's starting to look at supply budgets and all those different things that we try to budget as conservatively as we possibly can. So,
Mark, how much is the benefits amount a significant dollar amount that we should be looking at it here? I mean, is it in relation to, in the range of $9,000 or up?
say that one more time.
The benefits, you said that we're not included in staff increases or decreases, and this chart kind of looks.
On a $50,000 salary, you probably have, depending upon the individual, whether they take single insurance or they take family insurance, but everything else, it's probably between $20,000 and $25,000 of benefits. So, but I can go into each one of these because we know exactly what it is. So I can tell you whether or not they were taking health insurance and whether or not the new one is. But a lot of them haven't made that decision yet, which makes it tough. So a new hire might not make that decision until they see, especially if they're moving here, what is my spouse going to be doing and what kind of insurance will I have with them. So there's a lot of factors that I won't have an answer to yet, but that's why we can certainly do that, but
it's an estimate at this point at best.
Absolutely. So some of these are you'll see below where some of these are still estimates. So that's this year's budget. So that helps us decide a little bit of what's going on for next year, whether or not we have to. But as I said before, that enrollment's the big factor. That's what we were, and you'll see later, the legislature is a big play here too as well. So as we take a look at next year, where are some of the anticipated increases in costs or some revenue that will be lost for the 2024 budget? Well, we know David Kennedy resigned, and he's got a replacement, and that replacement is an increase in cost to the district. We don't just hire new staff fresh out of school. We try to hire the best staff every single time we hire. So, and sometimes that costs you more, especially if they've got their master's with 20 years of experience and the previous teacher didn't. We're always trying to put the best teacher we can in the classroom. Stephanie Moss, her replacement, I put the half sped there because that's half paid for by sped. A lot of our social workers are. Anderson is a replacement. That was $25,926. And there's a proposal that I'll be bringing to you in June to make Ashley Kaplan, the Director of Student Support Services, that isn't entirely finalized yet, but I will be bringing that proposal to you, and that would increase her salary to 31.5, which put her in line with the same salary that our principals are making in the school district. So I think a lot of you have seen the success that Ashley's had in the district. You'll see it again tonight when she does her strengths finder. So that's one proposal I'll be bringing to you. We do have a net loss of 15 kindergarten students because we were originally planning at about 150 or something stable to what we've seen over the past couple of years. And with that, I use the 2023 general fund, which is $68.63 per student. With that loss, that comes to $102,000. So that's pretty significant. Some of the cost reductions that we're anticipating, and PSEO is always a tough one. Let me pull the PSEO up. This is since 2008, 2009. So there's sometimes a little bit different number in the fall and the spring, but these are kids who choose to go to RCTC. We've had some kids go to the University of Minnesota. We've also had some kids go to Riverland. So the majority of our students choose to go to RCTC. So the cost, the fees, nearly all the fees, we don't get a lot of the rate on any of these. So RCTC ends up getting the majority of that general formula dollar that student produces. So when a student does leave, back in 2008, 2009, the net was about $121,000. That would have been revenue for the district, but the child chose to go to RCTC. That number dropped in 2010, jumped up in 10, 11, dropped again in 12, but you can see about where it was. And then about 15, 16, we jumped all the way to 223, so nearly $250,000. So, and this is all side by side with, we try to offer as many classes as we can to make sure the students stay, because we've got many, many credits that kids can. In fact, we had a presentation at a previous board meeting with a student who saved a lot of money when they went off to their college ranks. So we dropped again to 193, down to 179, and then COVID hit, and we can see it drop considerably down to $100,000. But it didn't take the 2 years for that number to jump right back up. We had 42 in the fall and 39 in the spring, so we ended up sending that check out for about $262,000 to RCTC. So that's a lot of money, and those are things we want to keep focusing on to try to keep those reduced. Although we know that's a great opportunity for a lot of kids to take advantage. We don't try to discourage that, but it's always nice if we offer the same courses in-house. We'd really appreciate them coming here. Some of the 5-year averages, I just did a quick analysis, and it's annually about 180,181. So last year was 262. That's that first number here. The anticipation for next year is 222,000, and that was mainly from some of the signups that Mr. Langemo has received. So he right now is 20 full-time and 16 part-time, which it's less full-time, more part-time than we saw just this past year. So we're estimating about a $40,500 savings to the district. Now that can change almost instantly. So these are the kids that signed up. One of the factors that we kind of saw was in April of 22, we had 14 juniors. This year we had 4. So we had a lot of kids taking PSEO next year. We're hopeful that a lot of those kids choose to stay here. Early graduation is another place where we can lose some revenue because the kids are either done at semester break or they're done at end of third quarter. So in the past 10 years, those are kind of our averages. We've had 13 kids, 13, 17, 17, 13, 16, 36, 12, 34, and 38. And if that continues, that gets pretty expensive. So the lost revenues during early graduation this past year was 100,000. So that's a significant loss in the district. Our pre-COVID average was about 17.9 students, and post-COVID is 28 students. So if that continues, but there's also some changes coming up. And one of those, we don't know yet if the legislature is going to be mandating additional courses. And if they mandate that government course before you graduate, there's gonna be a lot of seniors probably sticking around to take that government course. Personal finance is also something that the state's looking at mandating. We fortunately already tell kids that, you gotta take the personal finance course. But when we started moving our English and our math courses like we did, to allow for more math and English in their freshman and sophomore year, some of those kids are gonna be pushing that personal finance a little bit later in their senior year. So that probably means they're going to be sticking around a little bit longer. Yeah,
Can we go back to the PSEO just for a second?
that
Do we survey those students?
every year.
Okay.
Yep.
Do we see any trends on those? You know, is there anything?
Well, what you see is the kids say they like their freedom. They like that ability, and some of them just don't like that high school, that high school culture, and that's why they're going that direction. What we really should be looking at is what does ours look like compared to a Pine Island? What does ours look like, compared to a Stewie and some others? And that's something I've never done. But as I think about that, that might be a good thing to look at.
I also think the internship that the juniors are being offered this year that will carry into their senior year will be really a beneficial thing for students who are maybe on the fence about that PSEO experience.
That's a good point. I put that down at the bottom, that proposed schedule changes. If there is a government class that is mandated, that's probably, the seniors are gonna take that the next year seniors are gonna take that their senior year, the personal finance and those internships that you talked about. And we've got some kids that are interested in an internship, and that might keep them around a little bit longer their senior year. Right now, Mr. Langwell is estimating 5 graduates at the end of first semester and 5 at the end of second. And if that comes to fruition, that's a significant savings to our district. So we'll see. And once again, that's an estimate. We'll know a lot more as we get a little further along.
And we're saying in 2022, 23 school year, we had 38.
We have 38.
This year, next year, we're expecting 10.
Well, there were 12 2 years ago. So, and a lot of that's just those discussions that they have, and kids will ask in advance. They'll talk to the counselors and say, this is when I plan to be done. I need to schedule all these courses as early as I can in my senior year or even their junior year to anticipate that to get that direction. So
What typically drives that?
early graduation, for some, it's just going to work. For some, it's getting to spring football practice at the University of Minnesota.
Yeah,
So there's different factors for a lot of them.
sure.
So
And on the PSEO, is there high participation in certain classes that we could offer to retain them here versus them going to an RCTC?
well, that's it. Every course they're taking at RCTC, they can take here.
Okay.
Well, I shouldn't say it,
But
I'd say nearly all.
Right.
I'd have to take a look if there's anything specifically different. But we had a wave of student athletes last year that went PSEO. So certain teams, the whole team went PSEO, so that was interesting. Reduction in staff salary costs, we're actually anticipating some cost savings. We don't know really because we still have some interviewing going on. So with Amy retiring, we saved some money with her. Bliss resignation, we don't know. Nino's resignation, we don't know. Beelan's resignation, we know. We saved some money. We expect that Ariana's, we will save some money because all the candidates are pretty young, or I should say, don't have experience in the principal field. Bethany von Steinberg is done with the district now, so that's a $35,000 savings.
But that came out of the professional development money, correct?
Yep, that's all PD. Zidlicki, and here we come into some of our special ed hires, which would be tough. And remember, those are half as well. So Zidlicki, Irish, and Mayor all resigned. We're gonna have a tough time, as every district is, trying to find speech and language. And it's just there are some districts that are even going to third parties to fill that, and kids are getting speech online. So, We will rehire that middle school position, so, and that'll be interviewing. I know we don't have any candidates yet for the speech and language. And that's been open for quite a while. And then Thomas and Peen, the new social studies, that's a net zero because those two are the same position. So what are we looking for right sizing? This is kind of the direction I gave when we started taking a look at class sections. We will eliminate the one FTE at the elementary school in the classroom, and she's gonna be gone. We have a 0.5 FTE specialist that's at the middle school and the elementary school. So she was there, a full-time para, and we've got a high school 0.21 FTE. We've already hired that. So those are the savings we'll see as a district next year with right sizing those classes. So I thought you might be interested in taking a look at what we have done over the past few years. So even back in 11 and 12, we were running 9 sections in kindergarten, first, and then 8, 7, and 8. So we had 41 sections in our elementary school. And it stayed at 41 for 2 years. Remember we said that we had the really small class come in at 131. We actually had 9 scheduled for the kindergarten that year. But instead, we moved one of those teachers out and still had a class size of 16 with those. And so then we kept moving on, and we jumped to 38, to 37, to 36, back to 37. We stayed at 37, back to 38 for 3 years as we got a little larger, and then dropped 3 sections here and kept our class sizes really reasonable, especially compared to some neighboring schools. And there's, then we went from 35 to 34 this past year, and, or excuse me, from 35, which is this year, and we expect it to be 34 next year with Caitlin gone, staying there the next year, dropping another section, staying there for the next 4 years. So that's kind of what we're looking at. What you also look at is remember we added those sections during COVID in the middle school. So we went from 24 to 27 and then back to 24. So we're looking at maintaining that 6 all the way through from the middle school. So those numbers are, there for a while. We're running classes that we were 30s, pretty normal, even at 31 that one year. So those are getting big, and looks like it's going to be it looks like it'll be much better, even with that reduced section at the elementary school next year.
Mark, how accurate is our estimate for kindergarten this time of year for the fall?
Pretty accurate. They've got a spreadsheet that they've been working now for probably 10 years between Jenny and Bob and Ariana, and they've got a pretty good idea. It's a little easier now even because so many of the kids are going to childcare at Kasson-Mantorville compared to a lot of the kids that used to be out at a lot of in-home childcare centers or in-home child. So it's a little easier to predict, and that's why we're pretty confident that 135 is pretty close. What we don't know is how many kids from surrounding areas might be open enrolling yet. We know we have some, and I don't know what that number is off the top of my head, but I know I've signed some for kindergarten already for next year.
Is there a grade that we typically see open enrollment start to trend up, or is it pretty consistent all the way across?
Looks like the freshman year we see some.
So you have to follow it along diagonally. So where do we see the big jump? Some years you see it and some years you don't.
Middle school. But again, it's not consistent.
You go from 8 to 9, 9 to 7, 10 to 13, 13 to 12. It's just,
There's no
there's no real,
pattern.
right?
And I'm assuming it's kind of the same thing going out, there's not really a pattern to the people who open and roll out. I'm just
You
curious.
could say, let's say fourth grade, a lot of kids go out. When 2020 and 2021, we had 15 kids go out, and that jumped to 19 last year. But
But
if you follow some of the other classes,
we
there's
also
six,
didn't
6.5.
offer online. Was that last year or the year before? I get confused.
This was the year 2020, 2021.
Right, but that, no, oh, yeah. We didn't know,
This was the spring that we didn't
correct,
have
okay,
class.
yeah.
So this was the year that we did not offer an online opportunity. So kindergartners loved it because we didn't have hardly anybody going out. And then we had some bigger ones. So, good question. But when you take a look at it, you know, we've got some bouncing that go on during the year. And we've got some anticipation of some costs that are going to affect us next year. But the biggest financial, as I mentioned when I kicked it off, the biggest financial piece we have is what the state legislature does. And Mark's been up there a couple times. And I just put in, you know, when they come back, we're gonna have a much better understanding. Both houses have their omnibus bill out. They're in conference committee, the conferees are all selected. But if the Senate bill comes through, we're looking at a per pupil increase of $343 in the first year and $360 in the second year. And what's that up to be? 1.5 million plus, over 1.5 million. It'll be double the biggest increase we've ever had as a school district. And that's pretty exciting to get a lot of the things done we want to get done. Revenue increases on the basic formula in the House are 4 and 2, but they put that 3% index in there. So sped cross subsidy could still be in there, plus the English language cross subsidy. What are some impacts on the budget in a different fashion? Well, paid family and medical leave, which offers 12 weeks of family, 12 weeks of medical, paid, but that'll cost the district 3.5% of whatever those salaries are. But the employees also have to pay that 3.5%. So in the end, my difficulty with this one is who are we gonna find this long-term sub, because we're really short subs right now, so, but I'm sure they'll get that figured out. And the last one is the unemployment insurance for non-certified staff. Could be a large expense for our school districts today. The legislation will not allow school districts to levy for those costs. If we could, we'd just levy for it. If they said, okay, unemployment insurance, you're here. But right now, if you're working in community ed and you see those paraprofessionals that are in regular ed classrooms, getting their summers off and paid, well, it's gonna be pretty hard to keep that. It might be fairly hard to keep some of those community ed paras around, or some of the other staff. Still no word on whether or not bus drivers, we think bus drivers will also qualify to some degree. So there's a lot of questions with the UI, and we're gonna know those in 23 days.
I'm really concerned that we're gonna have a hard time filling our summer staffing positions.
It'll be tougher. It's either that or there's some school districts out there right now seeking strategies to make sure all employees are year-round
Right.
and just changing their job description. There's also a number of school districts who know they'll go broke unless they go year-round school. If you go year-round school, you know, that changes a lot of things for parents and kids, but then it's 45-15. You're out for 45 days, you get 3 weeks off, 45 days, 3 weeks off. So could that happen? We'll see. So that is my little discussion about where I'm at with the 3% on analyzing and trying to make some decisions as we go to next year. I thought it'd be good for all of you to see where we're at this year with some of the increases and decreases. I thought it'd be good to take a look at what are some of these impacts going to be for the upcoming year as well. So is there anything else that people would like to see in there? I know I know some people want to make sure there's some objectivity in this. So if there's anything else you'd like to see, you've got to kind of let me know. and I'll produce that information. So anything that anybody else would like to see?
Mark, I know that you have put a lot of work into this, and I know that you and your, the team are doing everything they can to kind of account for, making up for the increases that we had. Would you mind including some of what you have come up with to help or like plan for future? For example, have we done anything to look at our utilities costs or how we can reduce those or anything like that?
Yeah, what we're planning for is that'll just be mainly in the budget. So we're doing a lot of things with the electrical, and we'll get to that, we talked about that already, that we're trying to put in some energy efficiency procedures to try to get some of the lighting down. HVAC's another area, we made some significant improvements with the last bond by putting instead of going steam, just going hot water heat, especially here. But you'll see when I get to the HVAC and the lighting portion of this, there's some cliffs coming up for the school district where we really need to start planning. So that idea of having the HVAC and the light, our lighting or electrical use looked at this time of the year, even looking out 10 years, I think it was pretty critical for this district, especially when you start taking a look at it. And if you want me to, I can start jumping into that one right now, because that's your next handout.
Thank you for putting all this together. This is helpful.
Well, it should give you some perspective. If community members are talking to you and you say, okay, while we're hearing we're losing a lot of money this year because of the inflationary costs, you can let them know there's, besides those, and in just talking with Bob, we talk about it here, those losses, some of the increases we see in the budget on an annual basis, there's also some places where we save some money on the other end. And those things fluctuate each and every year. So there's cause for concern, but there isn't cause for frantic. So just keep that in mind. The biggest cause for concern right now is what's the legislature going to do for us. And that'll make the biggest determinations on what happens at KM as far as fiscally for quite a while, because it's pretty significant. I thought I would add for you, these are some of the projects that we have in process right now in the school district that I thought I'd share with you. Not all of these are related to HVAC, and not all of these are part of the lighting project, but these are projects we've been working on very diligently from the start of the year. And some of them we just aren't going to get to this year, and that's all right, because one, you'll see we don't have consensus. Another one, we just don't have bids that we like. There's different reasons why we're not doing them, and some reasons why we are. So we take a look at the Safe Routes to School project. Now, a lot of you were involved with that as long as 4 or 5 years ago when we started that plan. We got that planning grant. So these are all the trails that you're seeing at the elementary school, some of them that are at the high school, and even a couple of adoptions at the middle school. But there's even some more things that have to happen. One is the 16th and 5th Avenue. And this is the first one. So nearly all the trail projects completed. And I was having a real problem with that 5th Avenue and 16th Street because they were tightening it up so much. I didn't think our buses were going to be able to make that angle. And if a bus can't turn because and you know what the traffic, so you know what it's really like there if you're dropping kids off. If that bus can't make that turn, it's going to back up traffic for a long, long time, whether or not we have roundabouts out in 57 or not. So we talked with the engineer, and as you'll see some of our notes throughout the year, say, let's stay on top of this. And we finally have all agreed that that opening, or that intersection is going to be a little wider. We've driven the bus through it, we laid out cones. We got all those things in place so that we could certainly, and that's going to be going this summer. I don't know the timeline because the city's doing the project. We're going to have, the roundabout through the middle of July, and then Quick Trip's going to start. I'm guessing they'll probably start that in the middle of July with all hopes that we get that done before buses start bringing kids to school. So, and it shouldn't be that big a project, especially compared to some of the projects they've got. Right now, it's $60,000 and it's LTFM. So we have to pay $60,000 of that. That was our in-kind cost to make sure that that project happens. So some of you may and some of you may not remember that that was approved. I think you were on that committee, so it's been quite a while. The big camera, if you remember back to our project when we did the bond, we put a big camera out by the addition of the Performing Arts Center in the gym. So number one, to keep us in tune if anybody got hurt. The other was just to kind of watch the progress of that. Well, that big camera finally got mounted, and that happened back in February. And we're utilizing that now. We're even watching people go through the parking lot and checking out some license plates, especially if people are speeding or doing things they shouldn't be doing. So it's been pretty productive. We were having some issues with custom alarm, but they kind of came to the rescue and got things done. So KM Telecom, I think all of you know that we continue to work on that to try to make that one of the finest facilities to watch any of our soccer games, watch any of our football games. And it's a great place for kids to practice, especially in the spring when the ground's still wet and everything around. Well, we're putting in 200 capacity for the east and the west side was the original goal. And if you know it, or not the west side, east and west side of the south side of KM Telecom. The difficulty we had was we still have that crow's nest there, and we know if we bring those stands up on each side, you're going to be blocking the view. So in reality, we're going this summer from light pole to light pole, that it's only going to be 3 rows. So that will seat 290 visitors. It also makes us eligible for a state playoff game. But, and then the next year, we're going to go with the seating on the east side and or the west side, and the year after that, we're going to go with the seating on the east side. So it's now a 3-year project to get that completed. But when that's completed, the next thing we wait for is the improvements to KM Telecom field itself, because we're running on that since 2011, and they anticipated this would be about the year we have to, and it's still passing a concussion test, it's doing everything, so that's good.
So with that, it's now that 3-year project, what's the total?
Well, we know it's gotta be less than $99,000 a year, and that's what our goal is, mainly because we want to avoid having to bring this project up to the states, because as soon as you get to 100,000.
Right. Do we have any idea of how much less?
Well, I can tell you this, our original, if you look on column B down at the bottom line 20, we're now looking at 3 years, and back in December, which was the December before that, we thought the whole project would be 157.
Okay,
So,
we're still hopeful.
no, we're no longer hopeful for that number. That number is long gone.
So we're hopeful for about 297,000.
Well, we put $99,000 in the LTFM budget, and you'll see that, but in all reality, we're very hopeful it's less than that, especially now that we're putting that bigger one up front. So, the science wing and the courtyard,
What's the concrete project?
that's, we have to put concrete down underneath.
Oh, underneath the stadium,
Right.
the seating, okay.
How much have we brought in for renting out the facility? When we've had like the bands come and practice, when we've had that football league come through?
I can tell you we're bringing in some money, but I don't know how significant it is.
Okay,
So a more significant funding source is our naming rights agreement with KM Telecom, and KM Telecom's donated other things since then as well. So that's a great partnership. That partnership, our partnership with Minnesota Wi-Fi, our partnership, we're just about ready to sign another partnership coming up here very quickly, and our partnership with Minnesota Wi-Fi, they're all extremely beneficial to our district. Home Federal is a Home Federal Arena is a big one as well. So lots of great projects. Science wing courtyard, that's where we have the leaking. If you've ever walked the building, by the chemistry room, anytime we get any driving rain from the west, we got rain in the hallway. And the one on the north was not doing that, but we took a look. We were going to flip the doors at a cost of $8,000 to $10,000 each, or add a canopy. Instead, we're gonna flip the doors, and we're gonna do it for $9,800. And we've got permission from the fire marshal, because we always thought it had to be an egress. Now we're going to use it's tied into the learning center, so the learning center is going to have a different exit than exiting out into the middle of of the grounds there, so. That's summer 23 ready, and that's gonna be happening. The South Courtyard, this has been an interesting one. The transition program would like to be able to access the courtyard, to be the South Courtyard, which is this one, right here. And they'd like to access it because they want to plant some things for the garden, they want to do some things. Well, even for the last 5 years or 8 years since we remodeled a lot at the high school, Family and Consumer Science would also like to offer a grilling class. We can't offer a grilling class unless there's 2 exits. And so we haven't had 2 exits, so well, now we've got 2 different people that would like to see it. Some of the concerns are, distractions for the other teachers in the courtyard. To get out to the courtyard from the foods room, you've got to go through the other room. So we couldn't come to consensus yet to make this project happen this year. But that project, I'm hopeful we'll make it next year, and that will all be LTFM. So put that door in. The middle school nurse office reconfiguration, we're getting really close. We got some original bids from Beneke. We changed the layout a little bit. The bid stayed high. We got another bid from Knutson. Beneke came back and we brought them out. We told them we thought their bid was high and told them that the project had been reduced to this. And the reason we'd like to do this is we'd like the door to the nurse's office to be in the office. And the secretaries can assist. Josh knows who's going in and out. Both the counselors are right there. Right now, the nurse is kind of on their own island because they're in that hallway just to the west of that. So this would be a great improvement. We're hoping to get this done for less than 20 grand. We need some redundancy in the middle school water heater. When it's done, we don't have hot water. You'll see that in the plan coming up. The DO entrance, this one is long overdue. We've been talking about this. Some of you remember the old
eyesore.
the eyesore. That's gone, and that's good. We've got, we made a decision to go with the terrazzo, and the cost on that came in at $21,800, $63,800 for the rough in with the 6 new doors, and they're changing some of that. There's a lot of vacuum in there, so when we shut a door fast, all the tile up top are moving around all the time, so we're gonna fix a lot of that. So you'll see that in 2 different locations on the LTFM. Remember to put the canopy in, it was gonna be $250,000. So we have decided against that. We were going to do concrete this summer as well, but we're gonna back that concrete. The concrete up there is getting pretty beat up as well, so we're gonna back that off and probably not do that till next year or even the year after.
Mark, anything on the middle school roof
I don't have any updates on the middle school road.
that's still leaking? Okay.
I don't have any updates. And some other projects to consider. This is a fairly big one. That's that concession storage, bathrooms and meeting rooms. Went out to KPSNR to get some plans. And as soon as I went out to them, Dean, and a lot of you remember Dean. Dean said, how you doing on your water, sewer, electrical hookups? We haven't got any pricing on that. So you'll notice down in the orange on the right, we do have the water connection. We've got the sewer connection, water meter costs, and the plumbing inspection. So on the left-hand side, you'll see some of the balances. We still have a $30,000 balance with APSNR. Hail insurance balance of $553K from the 2019 hail insurance claim. The bond balance of 171, which can only be used for HVAC, and we can use 40,000 of the LTFM because we'll be replacing the existing concession stand that's on the other end. So there's some dollars to do that. It'll seem like a lot of dollars, but that's not a lot of building.
Yeah.
So that we just need to work through that a little bit deeper than we have. So, and that'll give us next year to do some of that project. The PAC signage, now that a majority of people are coming into our district now from the north and on the west side, we brought this to the committee and they all agreed it'd be probably time. So we're looking at $28K to put the Kasson-Mantorville be on the PAC again, but it'll be facing that north door. So people will see that when they come in. Now the Catholic churches.
And
got
what-
their trees down.
Where is those dollars coming from?
These are all LTFM.
Okay.
So fitness center entrance, we're not ready to make that decision. In fact, we're not ready to decide what we do going down the steps. And if everybody knows, it might be good to do this project even with the girls' locker room that's down there. That's really kind of a storage room now. But that gets really big when you start talking about a locker room. So we're not ready to go with that for next summer. And then into the performance package project. These are the 7%ers. So HVAC, the high school boiler isn't as efficient as we'd like it, but it's still running pretty well. And we replaced those tubes. I think Brandon was part of that, Kent was part of that. We made that decision, and replacing the tubes is $15,000. And replacing the boiler and all the Venmars is today's cost about $4 million. So even with some inefficiencies, if we can continue to replace those tubes, and we get annually, JJ gets a little feedback on whether or not we're seeing any leaking with those tubes, and we're not. And the boiler's still running extremely well. We're just running steam instead of the hot water. But other way around, excuse me, still running hot water instead of steam. So that's
Mark, that tube replacement, can you remind me how many years?
they said 8,
8 years?
and next year is 8. So that's why we're looking at doing that before it breaks down. We don't think the boilers on the north side will be able to handle, they won't be able to. So we think it's probably prudent to get those things done, especially when the cost is the cost it is. So these are all LTFM. We could use bond if we needed to, if we did go with the big project, but you'll see soon, we'll need to make some really big decisions if we do that. And the district-wide lighting project, we made some decisions, and if you look under column E, we can use LTFM funding to replace a lot of the older light bulbs with LED, but we can't use LTFM dollars to just replace light bulbs for energy efficiency. That's not an eligible excuse. So what we're doing is taking our oldest, our beat up lights, and we're replacing those with LTFM dollars and any other lights, and those are all in community ed and mostly in community ed right now. And then any other lights that need to be replaced throughout the year, we're doing that. So you'll see a line item in the LTFM fund that's coming up that puts that $30,000 aside each and every year. And I think we'll be able to use that fairly easily. Even by doing that, you're putting yourself on a pretty long-term replacement schedule for the LEDs. If the district would ever decide that they want to use something besides LTFM and use capital to do that, that would certainly be an option. But I don't know if it's a very feasible option right now.
Have we thought about though, I know Hayfield, they were able to obtain a grant and so that they were able to use put solar panels up, and the cost of the panels, the maintenance and the installation is all covered through that grant. And then they're also able to sell back or sell energy off that they're not using. Have we thought about doing something similar?
Yeah, we probably had 4 different solar groups come in and want to put solar panels on the roof. And right now, our operations director, JJ, is pretty solid against doing anything with our roofing systems because of leakage. And he's worried about the warranty, because we're on most of the district after the 2019 hail damage. Most of our roofs now are on a 35-year Garland guarantee. So, or warranty, excuse me, not a guarantee, warranty. So that makes it very difficult for me to tell the operations manager that we need to go with solar. If we wanted to do a solar project, I'd probably rather see it done on the ground than on the roofs. And we've got 25 acres north of town, and if that's something the board would like to consider in the future, but keep in mind that that's your future middle school too, when enrollment goes up. So, or you can purchase green. So there's a lot of different options besides putting them on your roofs. And if
I think it did, what I remember is it did invalidate the warranty on the roof. And that's why we just said it's not worth doing that.
I mean, I know we have a lot of flat space on the roof, but if there's some other options, I wonder if we seriously consider that, just for some things like this, so we could pay for that and generate some income to help offset other costs.
Yeah, something we had probably, like I mentioned, we've talked to a lot of different solar companies, invited them in, and we haven't seen, but one of the other worries is if we put all those solar panels up and we choose a company to do it with, in 30 years when their lifespan is gone, and that company is also gone, what do we do with those?
I think that's where you get creative in the contract. It's decided upon.
Yeah, you can get really creative in a contract, but when the contractors belly up, that makes it a little tougher.
I'm sure that that's been thought of at some other districts that we could probably look into.
When we're looking at that replacement cost, so this is a $500,000 project, right? You said $30,000 a year,
Right, it's gonna be a while.
that's 16 years.
That's why putting it in LTFM is the best strategy we could think of to try to start knocking it down right now.
Time we get it all in, there'll be something new. I'll start all over again.
I linked the LTFM and the changes that we've put into it, just so you could take a look at some of those. So I started with, those are the health and safety projects. You have to scroll down a little bit to get to the LTFM projects. But that science wing shows up for 9,800. The DO entrance for the 63.8. Remember the other part of that for the trousers below. These are some of the projects we're doing this year in this column for 22-23. Then that PAC west signage, the rekey, the community ed, the stadium south. We've got 39, as you mentioned, allocated for that. Amy, but I don't anticipate that it's going to be that. The facade on the bleachers is on there as well. Replacing defective lights, that's at 30 grand. That's going to go out there, as Angie mentioned, for 16 plus years, and we'll start all over again when that gets done. But it's similar to what we're doing for the gym floors. Every year we allot 22 grand instead of, and then that keeps us up to speed on this. Otherwise, we'll wait 4 or 5 years, and all of a sudden you get all 3 gyms you got to do, and then it gets a little spendy. Wrestling room ceiling needs a little patching because of the weight room above it, and people are doing much better on dropping weights, and we're not seeing as much of that failure. Community ed classroom gets recarpeted this year, and there's that DO terrazzo. We'll go to the HVAC system here pretty quick, but that cooling coil is in the air handling unit at the high school of 75.7. That's the some of you may remember when we had the tornado drill at the volleyball game here about 2 or 3 years ago, and we had to put everybody down into the boys' locker rooms. There is no cooling in the boys' locker room. The air exchange in there is less than acceptable. And so this will fix that, and we'll finally get a cooling coil to go down to that boys' locker room. Middle school water softeners in there. The parking chip and seals, the other place we spent 20 grand. Concrete, we anticipated 50. I think it's going to be less than that. It all depends on whether or not we choose to do it all, or we just do where the existing stands are. So when you take a look down at the bottom, then our projected expenditures are 608 with the revenues at 534. We're already rolling over a little bit of a negative balance, so we expect to be $182,000 in the hole after next year, which may seem bad, but that's good. And LTFM is that one fund where the state allows you to go in the hole as long as you've got a plan to go out. And you even look at 26, 27, and you see we're $700,000 ahead. But when you start getting out to that far right column, which is 32, 33, you'll notice that there's an awful lot of things coming due. And that's because a lot of changes at the middle school and a lot of changes at the high school all came about the same year. So we can scroll up and take a look at that, and I'll show you that here's a few of them right here. So the middle school chiller, the South High School boiler, the middle school chiller pump, and the high school chiller. All are expected to come out 32, 33. And so as a district, I think the land and facilities team probably really needs to start taking a look and planning accordingly, because even the roofing, we have parts of the roofs that are still, we need to complete, like the science wing and some of the pods for the extended classrooms at the elementary school, community ed still needs it. But you're not going to handle that with the LTFM account. So we might have to do what we did previously, go out and bond against capital or go out and bond against future LTFM to try to get those projects. But that's the reason why you do a project like this as part of the performance package. Is because nobody would have ever known that this bill is coming up unless you take the time to sit down and say, okay, how old is all the equipment? When are we going to need to replace it? And start making some very strategic decisions as you go forward. Which brings me to, if you go back to this, here's the high school HVAC system right now. So if we choose, these are all, I'll walk you through this. These are air handling units for rooftop units. And these are all of them at the high school. And you've got this packet in this page in your packet as well. But these are all air handling units and RTUs for the high school. So the Learning Center North, Music North Gym, and then these are the Venmars. And we also have an air handling unit for the South Gym and another handling for the extra room. And this is the location where all of them are, their physical location. Here's the chiller that they run off. So if they're in red, they're running off that north chiller. Otherwise, look how many are still utilizing that south boiler. That's gonna cost us $15,000 instead of $4 million to replace. So that's why, you know, the anticipated date here was 2024, not too long ago. But it just doesn't make sense to do that. So we're gonna recommend the 2035 to all of you. And putting that new boiler all the way up to 2035 as well. And anticipated cost, it was $4 million in this year's dollars. You don't know what that will be, you know, in 11 years. Who knows what inflation is?
Well, during the bond and stuff, we opted to retube the boiler at that time, and they were projecting, you know, it would be next year and stuff, $1 million. And that's, you know, that's not the case.
So that's a little bit about those projects. We also have some rooftop units and then some other places. And a lot of the new dates were 2008, 9, 15. And you know the 15, 16s, those are the ones that we put in the bond project. But in 28 and 29, we've got a couple of rooftops that are looking at about 350, and you'll see those in the LTFM. Those are already scheduled to be done. Here's the one for this summer. So summer 23 is the 75,700. That's what's going to get that cooling and air conditioning, dehumidification down to the boys' locker room. And you start looking at some of these others, we expect a lot of those air handling units to last 40 years. And we're hopeful they do. That's why they're out. Some of them 20 years if they're, so some of those you'll see are inside, and some of those you'll see are on the roof. And if they're rooftop units, their lifespan doesn't quite go as long. So also which chillers that they're doing. So here's those two steam boilers with the new tubes, and it's $7,500. And that's if we don't do anything with the Venmars and depending upon annual testing. If we get them tested and they test out really positive, we'll push that $7,500 back another year. As again, we'll push it back another year. The boilers, 16, we think they're going to be good through, those are the north ones, the new ones. We believe they're going to be good for 20 years. That's pretty conservative. I think you might get a little more out of that. But, you know, we got those middle school ones that they're not lasting. The pumps, North Chiller, we're expecting 25 years. That's above the girls' locker room in the penthouse. There's $1 million in 2033. That's one of them that we saw in the LPFM. That South Chiller, we're thinking 25 years with that one as well. And that one will be, we put $1 million down in 2041. These are all guesstimates when you go out that far. Chiller pumps average about 17.5 in today's dollars, so that's kind of what we've got them locked. Actually, they're 15,000 now, so we jumped 2,500 bucks on it. Then we get to the water heaters, and they're from 14 and 16. They were part of the bond project, except for this one, we had to bring that one a little bit earlier. And that's about 15 to 20,000. This one's actually smaller in size. These are actually really large, and this one's getting small. And every year we pay automatic logic $2,000 just so we can run the HVAC system efficiently. So JJ can run it from a lobby. So that's the high school. So you can see what the summer 23s are, and nothing in 24, nothing in 25, and the rest of them are not 3-year priorities. Moving to the middle school, here it comes 2028 for boiler, and we got a big decision we need to make at there's 4 boilers. And when they built the middle school, the one thing they did was they decreased the size of the room because they were running over budget. So if you replace a boiler and don't do them all, every time you replace another one, you have to take one out and put another one in, unless you crane them off from up above. So JJ and I were thinking about this and thought, we've got some room on the dock. If you changed your boiler room and made the boiler room storage and changed your boilers over and put them on the dock, you'd lose a little storage there, but then you could do it a little cheaper. So we put the first year at $750,000 and then $500,000 each of the years to pass. These two, boiler 1 and 2, handle 1.5 million BTUs, and these two, we handle 1. So we spread that out over 6 years. I don't know if they'll last that long. We've had issues with them already, but if they don't, we'll have to take a look at maybe buying even earlier. So these should be a real concern for us. Pumps are 11 grand. We're looking at those in 33. That chiller, there's your other $1 million in 33, because that chiller is on year 25. Yeah, that's one of those 2008 purchases we made, as well as the chiller pump. And this year we're doing we're adding. We're not replacing. We're adding a domestic hot water, and we're adding that walk-in cooler freezer. But I believe I gotta check on that. I think we might be taking that out of the kitchen instead of multi-effect.
As part of the,
We've got a balance in the kitchen.
Yeah.
In our food service account. So
right, because
that's-
that we were,
Right.
yeah.
So I have to check on that one. So Carla, will you write that down so we can check on that, please? Thanks. Early childhood, special ed. Once again, the boilers are coming up in 34, so we tried to spread those out over 6 years, but those are all gonna be about $500,000 a piece, and that's kind of in today's dollars, so who knows what it'll be in 34 to 40, and the pumps will go at the same time, and there's $1 million chiller in 2035 as well. The chiller pumps at 17.5, and the water heaters, we're gonna have to replace one in 28, and then another one in 30. This is elementary school and community ed, keep in mind. And then we've got 2 in 30, 1 in 33 and 29. So here's 2 water heaters we're gonna have to replace in 28, 29, and then 2 more in 30 and 33. So no priorities for 23, 24, or 25 at the elementary school. So they're in pretty good shape. So that's the HVAC side of the equation and how that fits into LTFM. I've got to compliment JJ on this. He's been just a pleasure to work with and has done a lot of great things with this as well. We've been cranking it up, trying to make sure that we can give you at least a preview of what this looks like. And if there's anything, are there any changes you'd like to see me add to this before the June date? Or anything else that would help fulfill the performance package? let's move on to the lighting. As I mentioned, this one's tough with LTFM because there just aren't a lot of LTFM dollars available. So when you go to the high school lighting project, anticipated replacement date for the entire high school is after the elementary school's done. And these are the spaces that already have LED. So those are pushing us out quite a bit. So we've got quite a few spaces in high school already that have some LED. And a lot of that happened when we did the bond, 16 and 18. We also made some big changes in 18 as well.
Those on the social studies area.
Right. So how do we determine the lifespan on some of those? Well, I just put the calculation. We think we're gonna get 50,000 hours. We anticipate they're running about 10 hours a day minus the summer. And then based on 260 days a year. So everything, but weekends are still getting a lot of traffic in a lot of places in the building. So that's a high school lighting. The middle school lighting is about the same boat. So we've got the fixtures and bulbs per fixture because they're a little different than they are here, plus all the sizes. Anticipated replacement date, again, all of these are after the high school. And we've got some that are lower priority, and we identified some that are a higher priority. Those are the ones that classrooms without. So again, none of the middle school, that doesn't mean if we got some ballast or some lights go down, we're gonna replace them with LED. But they're not on that LTFM list. And the last one is elementary school community ed. Here's where we've got some priorities. Our highest priorities going into this upcoming year are blue classrooms. So that's blue pod classrooms, not including the pod. So that's for the summer of 23. Jenny and Ariana know it coming in, and it's going to be 152 brand new fixtures. That's just for summer 23. The media center is in dire need. So we're going to replace 65 of them in the media center this summer. And then a community ed building, every classroom in community ed is going to get LEDs. So the community ed building will be done. So those are the three priorities for this summer. Next summer, we're doing the red classrooms and the purple classrooms, and that'll get us to our 30 grand. And the year after that, we're doing the green classrooms, the yellow classrooms, and music. So the rest of these aren't on the 3-year plan, but I can assure you we're going to continue staying at the community ed, the elementary school until we get those two knocked out. So that's where the priorities will be. So that final bid was 29.7. We're still looking at some rebates from the city for some lights. I don't know how significant they'll be, but this is the LTFM projects with the HVAC and the lighting that the board wanted me to complete going into the summer.
Mark, and you just hit on the rebate just a little bit. I think I remember that because we buy our electricity from the city,
Right.
we do not qualify for like an Xcel Energy rebate, right?
Yeah, there's some rebate changes since we switched over from Excel to the city. So I'm not saying there aren't rebates available. I don't believe, I'm saying this secondhand, I haven't talked to Tim or anybody else, but I would guess that the rebates may not be as significant as if we were working directly with Excel. I hope I'm wrong, because that'd be great.
Are all the school buildings on the cities?
Yeah, the elementary and the middle school have been for quite a while, but if you were north of 16th, you weren't, but now we're in.
And we still felt confident in $100 per unit estimate, even with inflation costs and labor.
I think we're good through this 3-year period on average. It's so nice working with Matt left too. He's been good to work with. We got a little disposal fee on there. Jenny wants to get the community ed office done, so she's coming up with some money out of her budget to do the community ed office as well this summer, because we couldn't fit it in under the $30,000 budget. questions about the lighting project and what we're going forward and how we're trying to get as creative as we can to make sure we're at least starting to knock some of these down so we don't have just an outrageous bill coming up in the future.
Slow and steady.
Well, if you've got recommendations for me that, and I don't know what kind of presentation you're gonna be looking for in June, but this will be very similar to what I would present, so let me know if there's some changes you want, otherwise we can review this again, and if I've got any changes, I'll make sure to put them in there as well, but I thank you for giving me an opportunity to run this by, Patrick. I hope it was beneficial to you, get a little idea of some of these big projects that are staring us in the face in 10 years, so.
There is one question I didn't get a chance to, on the budget adjustment.
Yeah,
As far as the snow removal increase of 47,000,
Yep.
does that include, like, do we have some equipment of the school's equipment that needed some repair, or was that?
no repair, that was just the increase in cost to IMES. We had a lot of snow events. A lot of snow events. Okay, want me to run it again? Oh, we can, go ahead.
So, any comments on Superintendent Tuska's 2023 performance package? Any questions on it? Okay. Did you have something before we move to 2024?
No, that's what I was gonna do.
So 4.1.1, this is really the start of the discussions on 2024 performance package expectations and, conversation from the board on what kind of items we'd like to see Superintendent Tuska address. And I'm guessing you have some thoughts along with one too, share.
Well, my thought was, it'd be great to get the board involved in this a little bit earlier. And if they've got some ideas or some projects that they think might be beneficial to the school, I would be, I'd be happy to work with any of us, like we've done historically. I mean, we've always started with about 4 or 5 projects and tried to get down to 1 or 2. There's some years there's been 1, there's some years there's been 4. So get down to a project or 2 that you'd like me to work on above and beyond the expectations you have from me as your superintendent of schools already. So start thinking about some of those ideas, and if there's something you'd really like me to tackle, I'm more than willing to put some extra effort in and try to get some of those things accomplished. They take time. Just so folks realize it, they take some time.
I'm gonna throw something out for thought. It's been a little bit since we revisited our district vision and mission. And it might be time for us to go back and look at that again. Will there be significant changes? I don't know. I think education's changed a lot with COVID. And if we're not visioning ahead, then we're already behind, right?
Strategic plan is something, I know we've talked about that before.
Says the person who has strategic strengths.
I have a whole list of things, but I'm just wondering, and I'm actually a bit embarrassed the last several years that I haven't commented on this earlier. I probably should have, but with the goals, I'm wondering if we could have them outlined just a little bit differently going forward and using that SMART approach.
Well, we look forward to your recommendations. That'd be great.
So so whatever is brought up to the board, making sure that it's specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and have a time frame on it, maybe periodic check-ins throughout the year. I think that would be very beneficial, and I know Kate has echoed the same sentiments with that as well.
Yeah, Kate shared an email with me earlier, and I let her know that I would share it with the board. And I'll summarize that as she would like us to use that SMART approach as we move forward, and just that we have objective, measurable, approach to, sort of walk through this. So, makes sense.
You bet.
And just some ideas that I was thinking about. I don't know if you prefer to get it in email, written form, or if we wanted all to discuss now. One I've been thinking a lot about would be retention, staff retention, as to maintaining a highly qualified teaching staff. by no more than 2% of tenured staff leaving outside of retirement or termination on an annual basis, which is about 3 staff per year. Another one, budget-wise, is really taking a serious look to an operating levy. We don't have one, and just knowing how things are going in the next several years, maybe that's something that we really need to take a serious look into. I hate the thought of having to ask taxpayers for more money, but I also want to make sure that we are doing everything we can and making sure that we can pay for what we need and what the students need. I have one for behaviors, but it sounds like we're getting a new behavior model throughout. And then building wise, community ed, it's amazing that they are so well received and that it's exploding over there. However, they're taking more and more space from the elementary school, and I wonder how long is that sustainable for? So do we need to try to figure out different options for that? Maybe it's time, because at what point is that line gonna be drawn? And like, I know right now, I'm also wondering, with, rooms having carpets replaced, are carpets generally in a preschool classroom more damaged than in an elementary school classroom? So do they need to be replaced more frequently? Or are they utilizing technology and equipment that's the elementary schools that's going to take away from the learning that can be happening? So just, I think there's a whole lot of things that come around with the growth, the great growth that we're seeing in community ed. And I know all along we said it's not our job to provide childcare, or it shouldn't be. That's kind of what we've been finding ourselves doing due to the lack of community support in alternative options for childcare.
How do you see carpet replacement fitting into my performance goals?
I just mean when you're looking at the cost and, what is that cost with community ed continuing and taking over? Like, is it costing us more money in the elementary school by having them take over more space?
How does that carpet fit into that community ed scenario?
Well, if they're in the elementary school, utilizing the elementary school places, are things needing to be replaced more frequently?
Oh, I don't know if you saw this or not, Amy. I was looking at the.
And that's just an
performance.
example.
No, I was just so one of the factors that helps them out with determining which part of the building gets used or not is when we start taking a look at these classroom sections. So remember back in 11-12, I should make this bigger. We were running 41 sections of school, for the elementary. That was K through 6. So in that same time frame, now that we're sitting next year looking at 34, that's 7 classrooms that are now available. I'm sorry, I didn't explain this. Those are 7 classrooms that are now available, which is nearly a pod.
Right.
We're one away from a pod. So that's why community ed, because if you recall, even as early as you were part of the community ed, I think the whole board community ed was looking at an expansion.
Yes.
But we decided to be
Yes.
frugal to the taxpayers
Yes.
and utilize some of those elementary school rooms with community ed so we could meet the needs of the community and still have classes available. We weren't stacking kids in classrooms. So it was a real benefit to the community and a real benefit to utilize some of those.
And I can absolutely appreciate that. I think maybe then my example, the carpet cost that was just one, but I also like best fit when you're having preschoolers sharing, in the yellow pod, in those kindergarten classrooms that they were using, the bathroom was in the rooms, but now you have, when you expand into the red pod or the purple pod, they are utilizing the same restrooms that the other schools. So how disruptive is that going to be to learning? That's big age gap in development and so it's things like that. Like, is there another way or a unique way? And at what point do we cap what community ed can do?
Yeah, I understand that. I understand that age gap too, but I also realize there's a lot of elementary schools in the United States, especially in rural areas where, kids that are in childcare, kids that are in first grade and kids that are in second grade and third grade and fourth, they all share restrooms.
Yeah.
And sometimes it may not be the best, but kindergartners and first grade, even the kids we have at the elementary school right now, I know they share a bathroom sometimes, so they've got one in each of the
And I
pods.
think it's fair to say then that after discussion, that might not be a goal that you would want to pursue, and that's okay, so we can just.
I was just trying to understand better how that fit in.
Yeah.
There was
maybe
even,
there-
there's even point with community and when we visited offsite sources,
Right.
locations, to take a look at expansion, but.
2 churches.
Yeah,
We visited 2 churches and almost had some agreements, and then at the end, they both kind of fell apart, which is probably good now, because we've got that extra space at the elementary school to utilize.
and it's great to bring families into the campus, honestly, when they're coming in for community education classes, I love that those kiddos are getting exposure right into
Well,
going into the
the
school building.
transition to kindergarten becomes so much easier. We learned that the hard way, and now this summer, our soon-to-be kindergartner will go to PK in the summer months just to get used to the building and the teachers and that, just familiarize themselves with the facility.
Yeah, there were some tough decisions when, I know Ariana and Jenny were working hard to figure out where's the best place to put some of these childcare rooms. And we've got some nice classrooms in that yellow pod, especially for some of our special needs kids. And so how do you weigh out the special
Yeah.
needs kids? They've got their restroom there, trying to balance that out with accessibility of parents to bring their kids right to a room in the first and second grade pod, which would be right on the outside. So I know there was some really intense discussions to try to decide what's best, and I support their decision 100%. I think the plan they came up with was really quite valuable for the community and for the kids.
I was trying to write down those just so I could track it a little bit, but what was the thing about an operating levy?
I think we need to not necessarily go out for one, but I think we need to seriously consider what that would look like and how we would go about that.
For what?
Well, for, costs that we're incurring that are just gonna continue to increase, and I see that our fund balance will continue to decrease, and at some point, we're gonna find ourselves in a situation, and so I think, after talking with some other districts, and I think it would be something that we need to look into and kind of decide, like, at what point are we going to need to be going out for that?
Do we go out for an operating levy first and get money and then figure out a way to spend, or do we have to
Well, I
figure
think
out?
we already, there's probably,
where
if you
we're at
look through the
first.
bills and if you look through all of that, there's probably, it would be readily utilized. I mean, the increase in healthcare, well, if it comes down from the state that we have certain things that we have to be paying for, I think we need to be, have that or be at least ready in a position to move on obtaining that. I think there's a lot of things that we need to be looking at and that we need to be ready when it comes to it. So. Again, these are just things that I was considering that might be beneficial to the district. It's not something that I'm going, not my hill that I'm dying on, but that's the whole point of this meeting, and I'm so appreciative that this year we're having this opportunity to do it.
Yeah, I'm glad it came with some ideas.
And then the employee retention one,
Mhm.
what was that?
To maintain a highly qualified teaching staff by no more than 2% of tenured staff leaving outside of retirements or terminations on an annual basis. We want the best of the best. We need to come up with a plan to keep the best of the best.
Yeah, that one's a little different, just because, people leave for a lot of different reasons. And people come here for a lot of good reasons too. I mean, I just mentioned that we've hired some very quality staff that are coming from districts that I respect a great deal, but it's just best for those adults right now. And we've got some people leaving the district, I know, this year, and for a multitude of reasons. But I also know we're very attractive to a lot of kids for open enrollment, a lot of families, and I know we're very attractive to a lot of teachers who have been in some districts that they realize that things are actually pretty good here at Kasson-Mantorville. So we got a great system going here.
One idea I thought of was in regards to the MCAs. I understand it's still extremely early to even discuss metrics, because you gotta see what the results are from the current tests that were just taken. But with all the focus and extra energy and effort that was put into those, it'd be interesting to kind of evaluate like a SWOT analysis, right? Strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Like what worked and what didn't within that. Were there key performance indicators from I mean, I know the data is so extensive, right? Like, but were there certain things that truly identified, or that were better identifiers of the at-risk students to put them into a intervention, thank you. You know, and that, or what timing was more effective, or things like that, in relation to the scores that come back. But I think just having a focus on continuing to improve those standardized tests, depending on, again, where the current results come in at, keep the student focused now.
A SWOT analysis of the interventions and the success of each one. So you take a look at what the high school did with their interventions during advisory or bridge.
Yeah.
So how successful were those? Maybe that would even be some survey of the kids to see what might have been the difference. I know I thought about that, just because the kids did, especially our high school kids, just did so well on this last test. So it'd be interesting to see what they think might have been a difference, although that may not be as objective. So,
Right.
but sometimes it might be a little more difficult to measure,
Right.
but we could.
Well, and my question with that, and this is, I think, maybe where I sometimes am not clear, is that a superintendent goal or is that the goal of the TLCs? Like right person, right job. If someone's already doing that, then, because I know how much they go into the data and how much they look at and how much it's utilized, and all the way down to the teachers on a daily basis utilizing the data point. So then, do we assess a goal and put a goal to the superintendent for the work that everyone else is doing? How does that work?
So that's our function, right? Like we manage Mr. Matuska, and we make sure that, I mean, that would hold true for every goal, right? Like if we had something that was building or construction related, that largely falls on JJ. But it's also lands at the responsibility of Mark to make sure JJ's executing said goal, or so depending on the category, that just rings true as Mark being the leader to delegate and to put the emphasis where we would like to see it, is how I perceive it.
I can think about something around academic rigor. I think that, or maybe rigor is not the appropriate word in that terminology, but certainly as we focus on academics in the district, there could be a goal that wraps around that. MCAs as a sole metric,
True.
I'm not sure that that's our best gauge across all students, across all grades. But there certainly is opportunities for us to really dive into EduClimber and figure out where some of those things did really well, what our strengths and what our spot was right now.
Yeah, and honestly, that would be great. I mean, I used MCAs just because it's something that's been such a focus point this year, right? But any measurable metric to make sure that reading, writing, and curriculum are being, obtained or to a measurable metric of improvement, then I think that would be a goal to consider.
What about something around PSEO numbers and how, strategies for bringing those numbers and early grads down? I mean, it's funding for the district. We believe that it's best to have those kids in the district and for them to be here, but I'm not sure exactly how we would necessarily measure that.
As we increased our number of college credits and stuff. And we did have a dip there for a little bit.
Yeah, we did, and then it bounced back up, and it's like,
Well, I think you can measure that significantly, or, you know, there's different ways that you can do that, and that would involve surveying with students and maybe parents, and I also think that how well are we marketing what we have to offer here? How well are we making it an environment where the kids want to be? This is gonna sound really lame, but I think to a couple of dancers who thought it was the best thing ever that they were able to go sit in a caribou and work on stuff between classes. Well, do we have a place that feels like that for when they have that extra time? Like, there's a lot of things I think that could be done to help with that. And you're right, it would bring funding back into our building.
I think it also creates a different culture for our upperclassmen, our juniors and seniors. I know for my student alone, right, then she's like the number of seniors that are missing from the classroom hallways, it makes the school feel different, right? And so there's a cultural component when a lot of our students choose to take PSEO, and if it's the right opportunity for a student, I don't want to hold them back from that. But I also so firmly believe that we offer great educational opportunities, college credits here, and maybe a focus should be on how we can create that type of experience within the boundaries of Kasson-Mantorville. But those boundaries probably need to change.
When they go PSEO, I don't remember what it was called, but there was like an additional GPA point system that was approved.
Weighted grades.
Weighted grades. Like, does that apply when they go to PSEO, or is that only if they stay in-house?
In-house. We don't weight any grades for any PSEO students.
other thoughts of potential?
That was really well spoken, Angie, by the way.
The other thing that comes to mind, and I don't know if it's a 23-24 goal, but probably again goes back to my strategic strengths, is I know that at some point we need to do some succession planning on some of our key administration in the building. And I think we have an opportunity to be very thoughtful about future transitions and how we can be prepared for that so we can best support the school district. And then in return, what's best for kids in that outcome. And again, that might not be 23-24, but.
Yeah, looking ahead over the next month and stuff, depending on how this whole next legislative session finalizes and stuff, there could be a lot of essentially mandates, unfunded mandates and everything else that needs a lot of attention and focus and creativity and how district financially is going to move forward here in the future. And so obviously it's really hard to tell what that is, but a month from now, we may have a very different thought on this and how we move forward over the next few years. And that may be something in the short term and stuff that could, as far as overall plan.
Some of what I'm following might even go into effect this summer.
You are,
Yeah,
Yeah,
which could be a significant
days after it's
challenge for us to be able to.
yeah, I've been in contact with Margaret Skelton already, and said, Margaret, what do these contracts need to look like? I said, best thing you can do for us right now is offer some type of course so we can start looking at job, not just job description, but what does the summer look like for some non-certified staff? So that, and there's plenty of work that I think we could have them do, but I don't know JJ short custodians all the time, but can you put a job description together with a parent and a custodian? I don't know if that. No, we did it during COVID, but we didn't.
That was also very different.
It was COVID. It was yeah. Nobody's recommending that. I'm not recommending that. But I don't know. I hope to get some guidance from Ratwick on what direction this goes. Because it could happen as early as June 1st.
That's not a lot of time. Given that today's May 1st.
Do you know what other ones could take effect immediately?
I don't know, they'd have, for the family medical leave, they'd have to set up some type of depository or insurance so that, the districts could give their 3.5, and then you'd have to start billing each staff member 3.5% so that they could start funding this, so that they could start providing access. We still don't know really whether or not the collective bargaining that we've already established would still be in place in addition to the paid family medical leave. So there's a lot of questions out there yet, so.
I think we have some ideas. And I think it's also wise that we wait until the legislature's done before we solidify any of these things. So it's going to be a few meetings here for us discussing this and keeping it on the agenda.
Or for the things that you're seeing that you feel should be a focus?
I've always looked at those PSEO and early grad numbers. You can certainly stack classes at the end of a senior year, but that increases PSEO and decreases early grad. So, I mean, it's I think you mentioned earlier, it's about the culture and establishing culture that kids really want to stay. And we've got some kids that found that freedom during COVID, and they really liked it. And again, that's where I'd like to really take a look and see what some PSEO numbers, and Carla wrote that down already. How do we compare with some PSEO numbers and some early grad numbers of some of the other districts that are equidistant to RCTC, or, Red Wing's got the community college right there. I think, what's Winona got? I think they've got.
South, the technical college.
Yeah.
They would probably
State
say
and St.
Mary's.
So what are they doing with some of their PSEO numbers? Early grads, I'm trying to put myself in that situation. If I was a high school senior and somebody told me I could graduate and go to work, I wouldn't have done it because I wanted to stay in athletics, but in the spring play. But
I don't know that it was an option back when I was going.
no, I didn't say it was. What I said was, I wonder what I would have done.
I would think that schools are pushing it, as we've been on some campus tours, right? There's lots of conversation about, come, start early, start taking classes.
Oh, really?
And
Well,
so
they need to-
that's been eye-opening for me, because they're trying to generate their own, student counts, which have fallen from on college campuses. But that was eye-opening. I didn't expect the campuses to be so forward
Yeah.
in that situation. That, again, just an eye-opening personal experience.
Yeah. I didn't think of that.
Anything else around 2024 performance package expectations? Okay, then we're on 4.2, the 7 p.m. Strength Finder Teach Back packet. Sorry, Ashley.
That's okay.
I apologize for that.
Do you want me to plug in, Carlin, or I shared it with you, so I could go either way?
Either one, I think you might as well just plug in.
Okay, I am going to just do an audio recording, because that's what we've been doing for our certified staff also. So I will record it and we'll just house it internally for, we looked, and I don't think we had recordings for previous board members, but we're gonna start trying to keep track of those moving forward. So, there it is. Okay. Okay, you have in your folder our new dashboard. So what we've done is kind of automatize our strengths dashboards as we're transitioning away from Bethany, leaving our strengths conversations and teach backs. We now have our comment version with our new transition team that will be taking this work on really full time starting next year. This is just like our first go at now taking this on as the Department of Teaching and Learning and some of other team members. It was super fun to talk with Patrick. So what I'll do is I'll share his image with you and I'll explain the image at the end. But here it is. This is what I came up. I'm sorry, I don't do my own drawings. That's not my skill set. So I've also found with AI now that I can actually have them generate some images for me. That's what I found. It's been kind of tricky, but I'm learning because I will not be doing customized hand-drawn, like I do stick with little, like that is how I go. So not my strengths or my skill set, but what I will share the image with you at the end, and I do want to do a little bit of review for you. What I'll do is share kind of those 5 things in a quick recap of them, and then I'll go through and talk about Patrick's specific behaviors that show up in his talents. What I'm doing there is I'm going to help to kind of define his brand, and I kind of want to give you those nuances of Patrick's brand, and then I'll share with the image to close. You're welcome to take notes if you want, but it is up to you. I can share the image out when we're done. You'll all have access to this. So I'm going to go ahead and get started recording. Okay, there we go. Okay, the first one we have for Patrick is WOO, which stands for winning others over. What that really is if you remember that social intelligence, people with WOO often are charming. They're observers of social environment. They have the ability to respond really well to others, and they just navigate those social settings with a lot of grace. There are no strangers to people with WOO, right? Just people that you haven't met yet. So those with WOO get really excited about you being excited, and which was like so fun in our conversation because it was just like we were smiling the whole time. It was just super fun. WOO often feel like it is their job to be cheering you on, cheerleaders, and they're just really good at making connections, winning those people over. Communication is really about expression, if you remember. People want to be understood, they want to understand you. It's not just verbal communication though. Some people share that communication through writing or art, fashion, photography. Communicators just really ask good questions, and they are good at making sure that ideas are captured and put out into the world. Positivity. People with positivity prefer to see the glass as obviously half full versus half empty. It's really a mindset, it's a choice. These people just choose to view the world differently. They choose to have a more positive approach because they believe that life is just better that way. Most people with positivity are fun, pretty lighthearted. They want to enjoy life. They want to enjoy work. People can see them as having really rose-colored glasses, but I think positivity is really just, it's a superpower because you have made the decision to posture yourself in that way, which is awesome. Includer, people with includer talents expand the circle wider. They always pull up another chair. They say that everyone is welcome here. There is always room for one more at the dinner table, and they kind of roll out that welcome mat for all. They have a really good read on where there is exclusion, and so they sense it and they don't like it. They want to remedy that. They don't like cliques. They don't like when there's someone standing outside of the circle or outside of a friend group. They just want to bring everybody in. They truly believe that exclusivity hurts relationships. And then that achiever, which for you is really just embedded throughout all of your themes, I feel like. That's your drive, ambition. Energizer bunny, checking off boxes, really motivated with lists. Many times these people just really like to get stuff done. Work is fun for an achiever. They enjoy that. They just get a lot of satisfaction from being busy and accomplishing all the things. So that is your achiever. Okay, I'm gonna dive into Patrick. It was super fun to talk with Patrick. He is such a woo. Like we just were like smiling and laughing the whole time. It was just fun. I'm not any fun. I tend to be like business all the time. So like the conversation, it didn't have to do. Yeah, well, I know because you're a woo. So you kept it going the whole time, and it was fun because you have that woo strength. Like, I don't have conversations like that with anybody, with everybody. So that I could just tell, like, as soon as you sat down, we laughed. I think my cheeks were hurting by the end. We just had we had a lot of fun. It was neat, and it was genuine. It was very genuine in your woo. Sometimes woo can come off feeling like fake or disingenuine or insincere. but yours does not. I think paired with positivity and your includer, it's just very other-centered. It's driven by how much I think that you value other people, relationships with family, with friends, what's really important to you. So that really comes out in your woo. When I asked you about how you relax, you said, I enjoy spending time with my friends. I value that above anything else. And family and friends. Game nights, bonfire, dinner, that's just how you reset. So, of course, you would say that, right, because you're a woo. I think it was very smart of you to go into sales for your career. That just makes total sense for a woo, right? We talked a lot about your career journey, which was fun. You kept being like, oh, do I need to keep, but it was just, I could see your woo show up as we talked through every kind of position you've held since you've graduated college. And I think that's where your woo and achiever appear really strongly, and that's where your talents really shine. Your woo and your achiever are just part of your work life. You shared about your positions that you've held, and one thing that you mentioned when we were talking about working for Ellingson, you said it was fun in the sense of building the business. And then later you said it was such a fun team. So for you, right, work needs to be fun. That's a value of yours. Someone who needs to have that or that work would not be a good fit for you. When you talked about your current role, you shared how the company grew from 15 employees to 300, and I could just see your woo being look at all those people, how fun is this, right? All those people for you to win over to have influence on. I also heard you talk about your woo a little bit, came up when we talked about why you ran for school board. You said, this is a way for me to give back to the community, for my family, and for my friends. So that's your woo being very other-centered. I think your role here on this board is going to be that connection building in our community, and that your woo really lends itself to that. Your communication. I think your communication strength is how you help others, and you help others learn to grow. So you use your communication as a means for improvement, which I think is also very connected to your achiever strength. That achiever runs through all of your other strengths. I heard that a lot. I asked you what you had been learning, and you said how things work, procedurally. And then you said you really enjoy tabletop discussions because they're valuable for seeing where we're at. And I think that clarity is really important for you in your communication strength. And it connects with your includer. It's important for you to give the same information to everybody. You want to make sure that everybody hears the same message. So that your communication is all about getting people on the same page. Messaging is important, but also communication about procedures and systems seem to be really important to you in your communication. You talked about writing a standard operating procedure in your current role. You said, I like having a playbook at the business development side. I like being intentional, and I think you really mean with intentionality, also clarity, being clear. Remember, people with communication strengths are good at making sure that ideas are captured and then put out into the world. And so when you talk about creating this plan for people, you just want it to be clear and out there for the companies that you're working in. When we talked about the school board, you said it is important for KM to be successful, and it is a desirable place, and that we have the tangibility to show for it, tangible pieces to show for that. And I think part of your role on the school board can be communicating what KM is doing really well for our staff, students, and community, getting that message out there to people. Okay, your positivity. As we were talking, I don't think once you had anything bad to say about anything else. Everything was just positive. We never got to the negative, dark side of Patrick, because that's not who you are. I did ask you though, one time I said, when you were talking about your first job at Cabela's as an event coordinator, the way you were talking about it, I was like, so you did like that job? And you're like, no, but I couldn't tell because you were so positive about the way you were talking about it was so positive. And so I was trying to okay, so he liked it. And he was like, nope, I didn't, but I couldn't tell because you were so positive the whole time you were talking about it. So that was a perfect example. But I would have never guessed that based on the way you're talking about it. So I see that as your superpower, just you are able to filter out anything negative and look for the good in all things. We talked about how you started college at Mankato and originally went into law enforcement, and you were like, yep, after Law Enforcement 101, I just knew it wasn't for me. It wasn't a fit for my own strengths and my personality, and I think probably your positivity, that would have been draining for you, and you recognized that. You didn't really say it was awful or terrible. You're just no, it's not a good fit. Again, putting the positive spin on that. And of course, positivity is just a really relating strength. I think you are drawn to others that are positive. In your role in your career, you like the challenge of winning others over in sales with your positivity. So that is really strong. Again, mixed in with like your achiever, kind of coming in on the side there. Your includer, I think your includer talent is something you use all the time, probably in your career. I think it's just a big piece of who you are. I think it stems from your upbringing, which you talked about, your family values that you said have carried you through your life. You just talked a lot about your very close-knit family, extended family, gatherings with cousins and aunts and uncles and everyone in there, and how you stay connected to them. Even if you didn't live right in the area after college, it was still you were connected to them. But that's what drove you back to CAM. You talked about being the middle child, which we kind of joked about because I'm also the middle child of 3. But you did use the word, you're like, well, maybe I'm like the peacekeeper, which is really appropriate for an includer, right? So like, you want everyone to like get along and everybody be together, and you don't want like when that conflict is in there. That's very includer of you. When we talked about what life was like for you in high school, I was like, well, who'd you hang out with? Like, what kind of group were you in? Who were your people? And you were like, well, I kind of floated in groups, right? Like, so you were not in any one clique. You were like the floater guy that was in all these different groups. You said I had friends that were in band. I also hung out with like the non-athletic people that were more like into dirt bikes and like wrench guys, but also with athletes. And so I just see that as your includer, right? You're not leaving anybody out. We talked about, I want to shout out to Mrs. Rude because you said favorite teacher. She's still here today. I thought that was so cool for you to mention that. And then there's a fun joke about that, but I'll leave that on. We'll talk about that. I told him I wouldn't say it, but you should ask him about it later. I was kidding, but I won't put it. As far as your career, I think you're always looking to pull out a chair for others, invite them in, share. Your includer really wants others to feel welcome and safe and known, and I think that's why you're so successful in your career. And then last, your achiever. Like I said, it was hard for me to separate this out because I just kept hearing it through your other strengths, and it's your 5th one, but it's such a thread because it's like different than the other ones that are very influencing and relator, and this one is just how you execute. So it's just part of all the other ones, but I'll kind of try to classify it as on its own. Your influencing and relation strengths are why you do what you do, but your achiever strength is the how behind what you do. And I love this narrative you shared with me about your lawn mowing business growing up. And I think it really like illustrates that achiever in you so well. You said in 4th grade, your dad set up this lawn mowing business for you and your brother. It started with you mowing at Holy Family Church, and then your dad would like drop off the lawnmowers in the morning, and then you guys would ride your bikes there later in the day. And you were like, well, like it started just at church, but then it grew because of like all those women in their quilting club. And then I was like, oh, that was your woo, probably like getting there and trying to expand your business, right? But you would ride your mowers across town, and then you grew into like townhome complexes. And then once you turned 16, you said, I'd go to Rochester and mow. So you said it taught me my work ethic and business development side. You said you even bought out your dad and you bought out your brother eventually, and then you would hire back your brother and your sister and your friends as needed. And I was like, such an achiever, like just going above me. And then you're like, yeah, one time I had like an internship during the day, and then I was delivering pizzas at night, and then I was like hiring people to do the lawn mowing for me. So you're like 3 jobs in one, and I was like, that's very driven of you and achiever-ish for sure, maybe overachiever-ish, I don't know. But you kept talking about how it was fun for you in building that business. I love making something out of nothing is what you said. And I also like change and to improve things and to grow things. And things are changing and improving every day. Those are all just those achiever quotes that I heard come out of you. When we were chatting about your role on the school board, you said it is important for CAM to be successful and it needs to be tangible. So I think success is really important to you. And that's your achiever. That is what is right about you. So that was fun to hear. Okay, I will explain this image now. Obviously, this is a bonfire, but one of the things that Patrick told me, and I could just tell that his eyes lit up when he was talking about like just spending time with people, and just one of the ways he does that is by relaxing, having a bonfire with other people. And your wound communication, I just like found the picture with the most people that I could around a bonfire, and I was like, that's your woo. Like you are so excited that all those people are there, your communication wants to go talk to every single one of those people that's there. I feel like you would just be the person there going and making the rounds with everybody, and that's your who and your communication. Includer, like everybody is here. There is room for everybody. You've got everybody around your bonfire. No one is left out. Everybody is welcome. That's very much your includer. The fire and the light itself kind of represents your positivity. I just think that really warm, positive energy is just wholly who you are, and that's the fire representing that. And then the achiever piece, like this isn't like a little baby bonfire, it's like a big bonfire, right? And it just takes a little spark, but it grows and grows and grows. And it's getting bigger and bigger, and a small fire won't do for you. That's not you, it's go big or go home. That's your achiever in there. So that is why I chose that image for you. And it was really fun to chat. So thank you for the privilege of getting to connect with you. I think your strengths and talents are going to bring a lot of value to our community. So thanks for letting me teach you back to the board.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. Does anybody have any questions or want to speak to what they heard about Patrick? Patrick, you can also speak back and say, nope,
No,
that was not right.
That was spot on.
Good.
Yeah.
That was really fun.
Actually, in the picture, what is that, the utility line up there? That-
Yeah, so like I couldn't AI that out of there, but it's, yeah.
Mark, only you would know.
Yeah. Again, not drawing my own custom, so doing what I can.
I think that's a great picture.
Yeah.
She showed it to me earlier and I had to do a double take. That was backyard.
Right? Okay.
Good job, Ashley.
Thank you.
Dancing around the
All by himself.
Zip line.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, there you go, that's what the cable
That's
is.
what it is.
Yeah.
It's right above the fire.
Mhm.
If you're done, you might wanna talk to somebody
It
else.
must be fun though, when you wouldn't be doing it.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming. and-
Yeah,
and staying.
Of course.
You don't have too much to do. Such a welcome to me, man.
You do, sorry. Oh, okay, thank you. This is yours.
And we just have one action item tonight, and that is the approval of the KMESP MOU. Superintendent, you just want to talk about that MOU just a little
Well,
bit?
this came to the finance committee, and the finance committee took a look at it, and in the end, we sat down, and Bob actually approached Nikki after our last finance committee meeting and said, here's what we had kind of come up with at the school board. So retro period for healthcare benefits all the way back to January 1st. Salary payments will be lump sum if they choose, so the secretaries can choose. We gave the same, kind of the same thing with the teaching staff, so we gave them some money, they can distribute it as they saw fit. And the funds we included are provided on or before June 26th, so when Bob went up, Nikki signed it right away. And a reminder that the teachers actually did utilize their entire MOU funding that we gave to them. And these are dollars that they actually didn't accept from the district that we're utilizing to do this. So I was very proud that they took the opportunity to allow some of our other healthcare recipients in the system to get some of these dollars. So I'm very pleased with KMM. So thankful for that. So I recommend that we sign it.
Do we have a motion to approve the KMESP MOU? Thanks, Brandon. A second?
Second.
Thanks, Mark. Any discussion on?
So just to clarify, again, the $988 goes to CAMESP, and then they choose how to distribute those funds within their membership.
Right, they've got till May 19th to decide how they're going to distribute it. So whether or not they give it to those that already have healthcare, they could give it to somebody on salary payment so that their healthcare, if their spouse took healthcare or something like that, they could utilize it. So that would have to be a salary payment, not a tax-free payment. So We didn't give them any stipulations on how that should be spread out amongst the rest of the secretaries.
And do they have a voting structure because it's such a small group, or how does that work within it?
Don't know. I'm sure they're communicating.
Any other questions? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor of approval of the KMESP MOU, state aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign, motion carries. Under informational items, next regular school board meeting is Monday, May 17th, at the community forum room. That also, the end of the year employee annual luncheon is Friday, June 2nd at the high school commons. And the next regular school board meeting is Monday, June 26th. Anything else before we adjourn?
Did you get who's in charge of the basket again?
Give Mark $20.
No, we do it later too. Oh, yeah, that was 50 already. This is a profit thing.
Apron's on at 10:30, that's our day that we serve all the staff their meal that day, so.
It's pretty
Did
awesome.
have,
It's really
you guys have any more ideas? There's a store on Main Street, like a general store. And then also the coffee place in Kasson too. I thought it'd be two good places to purchase gifts from.
I will take the word. And thank you. Thank you. Anything else? How about a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
Thanks, Angie, in a second. Thanks, Patrick. All in favor of adjournment, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks for letting me run through that.
Is that June 2nd?
Yeah, I saw you. Nope, these are from the last board meeting and they are all ready for me. Which is what you just gave. Okay, so. No,
You need this back.
just before.